Hi, I'm Antonio Mora. Unless you followed the news very carefully, you probably missed the fact that Russia launched a floating nuclear power plant this month. The power station is taking an epic journey, being towed through the Arctic Circle on the Northern Sea Route. It's a 4,000-mile trip from Murmansk in Russia's extreme northwest to Pevek in Siberia in Russia's extreme northeast. Sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, right? Sure enough, that's exactly why environmental groups are sounding the alarm, calling the floating nuclear plant Chernobyl on ice, and warning it could threaten a, quote, fragile environment which is already under enormous pressure from climate change. The Russians made things worse by describing the barge as unsinkable, inevitably leading to it also being dubbed the nuclear Titanic. On its face, this all seems scary. And it's certainly hard to trust the Russians given their historical lack of transparency after nuclear accidents. The specter of Chernobyl was raised again just a few weeks ago by Russia's behavior and varying explanations after a cloud of radioactivity followed a mysterious explosion at a Russian weapons testing site. Also, an accident could have serious implications for the U.S. because the floating plant will be moored less than 600 miles from Alaska. For context, after Chernobyl, nuclear fallout reached Sweden 700 miles away in less than 48 hours. Russia insists it's taken all the necessary safety precautions and that the plant will be invulnerable to tsunamis, triggered even by 9-magnitude earthquakes. But can you really rule out a tsunami dislodging the plant from its mooring and sending it crashing onto land, separating it from the water that is its cooling source? On the other hand, this could be much ado about not a lot. The U.S. used a barge-based reactor to generate power for the Panama Canal Zone in the 60s and 70s. Nuclear reactors have also been used for marine propulsion on ships and submarines for more than half a century, with no accidents in recent memory. In fact, more than 100 ships and subs with almost 200 reactors on board are in use today. And the two 35-megawatt nuclear reactors on the Russian floating plant are much smaller than the four 1,000-megawatt reactors at Chernobyl. In fact, some Russian subs have reactors that generate 5 times more nuclear power than this new floating plant. Russia isn't alone in building reactors on floating barges, and some believe these sea-based reactors are the nuclear power plants of the future. China has one that's expected to go online next year. MIT has designed a 300-megawatt floating power plant following the model of offshore oil drilling platforms. MIT's plant would operate miles from land and be safer than one docked at a port. The new Russian floating reactors could power about 70,000 American homes. Supporters insist that the pros far outweigh the cons and hope for a future where nuclear power stations float off the coasts of cities everywhere. They argue that they are safer because of all the water at hand to combat any overheating. Recent nuclear catastrophes occurred because of failures in the cooling after a chain reaction. Also, the smaller floating reactors are cheaper, can be built more quickly, can move to different locations, even remote ones that are difficult to access. They constantly produce power as opposed to wind and solar energy sources. And they bring the climate change benefit of producing power without generating greenhouse gases. At a time when reducing emissions is an almost universally accepted need, a reality where floating nuclear plants are common may not be that far-fetched. And that would raise a significant geopolitical issue. The well-intentioned American anti-nuclear movement has hobbled developments in nuclear energy in the U.S., something that has not been a problem in Russia and China. The U.S. should take care not to fall behind its rivals in another developing technology.